They tried to keep a lot of things the same here, but something always felt off because you're not going far enough as to make this live action, so it's still animated, which begs the question, do you think this movie actually needed to happen? The late 90s and early 2000s were dominated by Pokemon. Whether we're talking about the Game Boy games, the trading card game, or the television show, it was hard to find somebody that didn't know who Pikachu was. Pokemon had such a massive audience that led to a series of films, with the first one being released in Japan in 1998. Pokemon, the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back, would be the first time our parents could buy a movie ticket and a bag of popcorn to enjoy pocket monsters on the big screen. Now in 2020, you can enjoy a new version of this movie featuring a fresh coat of paint, 3D characters, but at the same time, it is the similar story that we grew to love. What do we think about Pokemon Mewtwo Strikes Back? Let's talk about that now on another exciting episode of A Cast of the Past, with a brand new episode each and every Sunday with yours truly, Juan Velas. Now joining me, we have the Pokemon cast. We've talked about the tier lists, we've talked about the movies, Detective Pikachu, all sorts of stuff, so it's going to be very interesting how we talk about this with Ryan McNulty from Boston, Massachusetts. Now, Ryan, we talked about Aladdin, where you have a 2D movie become a live-action film. What would you say is your take on a 2D animated movie being turned into a 3D animated film?
It's pretty interesting. I feel like it kind of has its place. Although, you look at something like The Lion King, where I feel like it didn't really work. But in the world of Pokemon, I think it's definitely something that is interesting, and there is an appealing aspect to it because seeing Pokemon in fully 3D is a new experience compared to watching them on the cartoon. We've seen that with the evolution of the games going to 3D. We've seen how Pokemon look different when they're more realistic in Detective Pikachu. So it is a fun experience to see these Pokemon in sort of a different light in the 3D. Like the gimmick works well for Pokemon more so than, your everyday movie, I would say.
And now we have from London, Ontario, Keith Hamilton. Same thing, man. When we first wanted to review this movie, you were very adamant that we reviewed the original one, but we also said, hey, we've talked a lot about the original versions of things like Resident Evil 2, etc. So what's your take on this transition, but it's all still animated?
I think in theory, it's a cool idea, especially from the angle of modernizing something and being able to release a new product for somebody to get excited about, but sometimes it doesn't always work. In some cases, the old looks better. Yeah. And this might be one of them.
I think that the most fascinating thing, and I would love to get your guys' response about this, is that I honestly forgot this was going to even come out. I think it just casually came up in a conversation between the three, like, oh, right, they're doing a Pokemon thing on Netflix, but Pokemon is an entire spectacle, yet it seemed like, I don't know, maybe they were not too motivated to talk about it. Maybe they knew that it wouldn't do all that great. What did you think about when you found out that they were going to actually do this in a 3D style?
Well, thanks to nostalgia, I was very excited that they were re-releasing this movie because, to tell you where I am in my life right now, I am very deep in the Pokemon weeds. I was very, very aware that this was happening and the fact that it was happening on Pokemon Day this year. So I was really excited about it. This is one of my favorite childhood memories, the original. So the fact that they were re-releasing it, that I could try and enjoy it again, I was very excited and very aware of it.
For me, I definitely wasn't as excited. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm interested to go back and rewatch this story because I haven't seen it in so long. But for me, I love Pokemon. I love the games. I love, you can see for those watching the video version, you can see all the plushes behind me. I enjoy me some Pokemon, but every time I've tried to go back and watch some of the show, it's not really my thing anymore. I loved it as a kid, but the shows, the movies, I'm just not as much interested as it comes to like the video games.
I think it was definitely a thing of the times, and everybody watching and listening, if you enjoy our conversations, you can leave a 5-star review on your favorite app of choice, whether it be Stitcher, etc. If you're on YouTube, hey, what's going on? Keith is beautiful. You can subscribe, hit on that bell. That really does help. And we can carry this conversation on our Discord over at acastofthepast.com/Discord. Now, I think that I was personally very motivated because we did have this debate between the three of us where, once again, Keith was wanting to watch the original one, but I wanted to watch this one. And I sat down here, and honestly, I had no expectations, right? We've watched Detective Pikachu, and I love that. And I mentioned that I loved that movie up until a certain point. Then I started liking it less and less. But here, I'm at my home, right? I didn't pay a movie ticket. We are already subscribed to Netflix. So the chances of me disliking this was honestly incredibly small. Yet, despite that,
yeah, how did this decision work out for you?
I really hated this. I felt so damn uncomfortable watching this. Just something about it seemed out of place. It lacked the feel, the personality. I know that nostalgia is a thing, right? But I've watched the original movie a couple of years ago. I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was still fine. And I think it's because it's got that anime style, etc. But when you look at something like Aladdin, right, where you go 2D to 3D, there's a reason they changed a couple of things because it just does not work. You can't copy and paste that, yet they tried to keep a lot of things the same here, but something always felt off because you're not going far enough as to make this live action, so it's still animated, which begs the question, do you think this movie actually needed to happen?
No. Now that I've seen it, absolutely not. I think the world is better off just having the original version of that came out when I was what year did it come out? It came out in
1998 was the original release.
So when I was 8 years old, that's where that movie belongs because like I agree with you completely that when I was watching this movie, even though like the content of it is pretty much one-to-one identical, they do a little bit of changes, but it felt uncomfortable the entire time, and for most of the movie, I couldn't wrap my head around it, but what I landed on was the animation just looked weird. That 3D representation, specifically of human beings in that movie. I think the noses, the faces, just, it seemed very off. And maybe it is a situation because we grew up on a very specific style. Because what I did, because I felt so bloody uncomfortable by this movie, I went back and checked out sections of the old one just to make, because I had that moment of, almost crisis where I was thinking to myself, oh God, do I hate this movie? No, I can't hate this movie. So I went back, watched the original one, and everything was good. Everything was fine. But I just couldn't get over the style of this movie. And for that reason, I don't think it needed to happen. Maybe the world would be better off without a second Mewtwo Strikes Back.
So I would say I feel a little bit different about this movie. Yes, the animation, I do think the people looked weird, but I think I can just get past that better than most people, I guess. It did feel a little tech demo-y at sometimes the way the camera moved around. It just felt off. It felt like the camera needed to cut more as opposed to always moving around. I don't know if you know what I mean by that,
yeah.
But that was a little distracting. But for me, honestly, and granted, I have not seen the original version in a very long time, and I'm pretty sure there was even a re-release before this movie came out where Pikachu talked at the end and spoke English, and it was weird. But I have not seen the original in so long, but I thought a lot of the problems with this movie was the actual story of it. I think this is just a straight up boring ass movie. I was not really what happens in the first half of this movie. It takes them so long just to even get to Mewtwo's island or whatever. I just felt like nothing was happening. People were standing around and just talking to Mewtwo for half the movie. What I don't even know what Mewtwo's goals were. Why did he make the clones? I don't really. It didn't really fully resonate with me.
Could you provide a brief summary of? I know there's not a whole lot of story, but what story is there?
Where am I? Who am I? That is your story.
And there it is.
Pretty much. Yeah. The whole thing is that Mew is the most incredibly powerful Pokemon, but they're able to get an extract of them. What?
A mythical Pokemon.
A mythical Pokemon.
Found underneath a truck if you have cut before the SSN
That's a lie.
leaves.
It's a lie.
Man, no.
It's
Not
the
true.
real
Now
me,
people are
damn
going to be
it.
calling you out,
true.
Keith. You got to be careful now. But Mewtwo is a creation, a man-made creation, a result of some extracts from Mew. So he immediately gets upset, and the humans are like, hey, we control you, Team Rocket, a bunch of things
Have you
get
ever
involved.
seen the movie Jurassic Park? It's not that far off, except if the raptors were psychic.
Except way less good.
Yeah. And
Yeah. And I think that, okay, so that is pretty much the story, right? Is the whole thing of I'm not a Pokemon, but I'm also not a human being because I was created by a little bit of both, and it's this identity crisis. Now, Ryan, you mentioned something that I think that you can compare with something like Dragon Ball Z, and I'd like to get just a little bit of context with this because Pokemon started as a video game, got the card game, we also got the TV show, and then we got a movie. So if you want to talk about story, each one of these different mediums handles it completely differently, right? But a television episode, you have 30 minutes, you have a purpose, usually it gets solved by the end. Sometimes you get a part 2. A movie is usually a lot longer, like an hour and a half, give or take. So they do got to sort of stretch out, the story that's fleshed out. When you go to Dragon Ball Z, you have hundreds of episodes, you have a lot of movies. In that case, just generally speaking, when you think about DBZ, did you at any point enjoy some of the movies more than the actual animated show?
No, most of the movies were pretty bad, except for the only good movies in Dragon Ball Z, like speaking old school Z before like all the super stuff came out. But the only 2 movies that I thought were really good were the ones that were directly tied into the story, which was like the history of Trunks and then the Bardock movie about like Goku's father.
Whoa. Are you not going to say Broly was a great movie?
Broly is not a great movie. Maybe the new, I didn't see like the new Broly movie, which came out.
No, I'm talking about like Legendary Super Saiyan back in the day.
It's not that great. It
Shut
really
your
is not that great.
goddamn mouth. Well,
So what
we'll
about
fight
you, Keith?
about
Generally
that another
speaking,
day.
then, yeah. When it comes to these movies, did you ever think about that? Like, wow, these movies are legitimately better than the series. I personally do think that it's always felt like it's an additional thing. It's cute, but it's made only for fans that are passionate of that and just want more of it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's different enough that it's very hard to compare it because just to use this as the Pokemon as an example, it is very like, oh, you're going on an overarching adventure in the TV series that if you really like, in my opinion, if you cherry pick episodes, you're going to find few that are better than the movies that I've seen anyway. But the movies are kind of like these side stories, very Dragon Ball Z-esque, that if you like the franchise, this is going to give you the cool stuff of the franchise. I didn't really have as many issues with the story of this movie because when I watched it, well, to a degree, there's not much story. I guess I should say I didn't have much issue with what happens in the movie because when I was watching it again, I kind of tried to look at it through the lens of young me, and that made me enjoy it more because I remember it because I wish I had it somewhere around here. I'll show it on Twitter. I'll make Juan post a picture of it or something.
Yeah.
But I have a stopwatch that a ex got me that's just a picture of Mewtwo, and I love Mewtwo. Mewtwo is my favorite Pokemon. Of all of them that have ever come out, I've always gravitated towards Mewtwo. This was the first time that you really saw Mewtwo. Like, yeah, he was in the show a little bit, but this was like Mewtwo Unleashed. You got to go to the theater to see.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then like this epic fight with Mew, and Mew had never been in there. This was really the first time that you got to see legendary Pokemon in the Pokemon franchise, and that was cool as hell to 8-year-old Keith, and bringing it back to that is what made me enjoy it the most. And I think that's where the appeal of something like this really comes from. Like, here's the cool part of the Pokemon series that everybody likes, especially if you're into like mythical and legendary Pokemon, because that's kind of what the movies have been all about. Like the later ones are about like Lugia and Celebi and Ho-Oh and the dogs and so on and so forth. So
They're beasts. They're beasts, damn it.
They're dogs.
One of
They're
them is a saber-toothed tiger. It's a cat.
They're legendary
Okay.
dogs. And they're pains in the ass, but just to be able to see these cool things, like I don't care who you are, if you grew up on Pokemon, seeing Mewtwo battle it out with Mew is cool. Whether you like the animation or not, that is a cool thing to see if you like grew up watching the original 150. Every time you see Charizard go to town, you get excited. You feel it. And that's what that movie gave me.
How do you feel about that with this movie? Because I think that the biggest problem now is that I agree completely. I remember when I went back to the movies and I saw it in the theaters with my mom. Holy crap, my mom definitely loved me because I must have been obnoxious as hell.
Oh yeah,
because,
I must have been miserable.
Yeah, so that was super cool. But is the 2D to 3D transition different enough that you felt someone like that now? Because let's be honest, like this movie is technically catered to us. And I'm not saying it's catered to young Keith. It's catered to now Keith because you were the person that technically
came out
grew
in
up.
2020.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I know the point you're trying to make though.
Yeah,
but I think I enjoyed it because, you know, we've talked about the animation being a little lackluster, but I do think they did a good job with the Pokemon aspect of it, where the human beings look weird. I think the Pokemon in this movie look awesome. Getting to see like a 3D Gyarados and Vulpix and Rhyhorn and then Mewtwo, Mew, and then the three starters. I really enjoyed that, and seeing them all battle out, that was the highlight of the movie. It was the highlight of the movie back in the day, and it's the highlight of the movie to me right now.
You know, had Detective Pikachu not come out, this probably would have been a lot more impressive, but since that was even more hyper-realism, that this was, you know, it's cool. It was fun to, you know, just in principle to watch a movie in a totally different style, and it's relatively almost shot for shot the same movie, but in this 3D animation. So for that experiment alone, it is interesting to watch, but I think as a movie, I did not find it that enjoyable. So yeah, it's cool to see the Pokemon, but just looking at it as a movie, it is virtually pointless. I mean, they basically pull a reset at the end of the movie. It has, you know, no impact at all. I don't even know what Team Rocket was trying to do this entire movie. It didn't really seem like they were doing anything. As a kid, though, I loved it. But for this case, I was trying to take the nostalgia goggles off and just look at it as a movie. And as a movie, it's not great. But obviously, if you're a Pokemon fanatic, if you're a younger kid and you didn't watch the Generation 1 stuff, then yeah, definitely this is something to watch. But man, hey, they put Donphan in this movie, all right? You got Donphan. In Gen 2, I'm pretty sure Gold and Silver were not out yet when this movie came out. So you were like, who is that?
The anime was awful
man.
with that. Like, Ho-Oh was in the first episode of the show.
Yeah, and then they brought in Togepi, but I think they were trying to tease it, get people excited, right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty
tickle
sure
the taint about
in the original movie there was like a little like cartoon too that played before the movie, and that had like
Pikachu's Vacation or Pikachu's
and
Adventure
had like
or something.
You had Snubble in there too, so they were like, "Oh, look at these Gen 2 guys." So I forgot that Donphan was actually in the movie though.
Yeah, but it is kind of crazy how, you know, you did see Ho-Oh in like the first episode right of the TV show. So it's like insane foreshadowing of what was to come. Just like generally speaking about this movie now, I think that the reception that it's received has been incredibly lukewarm. And I do think that it is going to cause a lot of studios to question this whole thing of like, look, you know, Netflix is available. So I had a lot more fun, even though I technically hated Detective Pikachu by the end, but from a story standpoint, from a visual standpoint, damn, that movie was freaking amazing, right? When from Pikachu to everything else. So it's like Ryan mentioned, look, if you wanted 3D Pokemon, we already got that before. So that's not new. We're not doing live action Pokemon here. So this is easily maybe the most forgettable Pokemon project out there because it's not different enough from the original movies. It doesn't stand on its own. And if you wanted something with more production value, that's already out there. do you think that this is going to cause a thing where maybe they stay away from the movies and just try to focus more on the video games? Or like, where do you think Pokemon can go from here past something like a Sword and Shield?
Just make
like
new
the
movies.
New games?
I mean, they're still making new movies.
Yeah,
If
and
they
they're
wanna,
still making new anime.
yeah, if they want to try this out on a newer movie, it might be interesting. If they want to make the characters look a little less weird, but yeah, other than that, I mean, just keep making the new stuff. We don't need to. I know Gen 1's their moneymaker, but they don't need to always go back to Gen 1.
I don't think it impacts it in a negative way because this was like a celebration thing. This was supposed to be, well, it was released for Pokemon Day, right? It was supposed to be for the people that grew up and enjoyed it. It was a celebration of Mewtwo Strikes Back, and I think that's all it was. Like, hey, the Pokemon pipeline is pretty much stronger than ever, and it keeps on churning. There's movies, there's anime, there's video games. Just everything's gonna be fine. This was just like a fun little thing. Hey, it's out. It didn't do great, so we probably won't see the rest of the old movies. Like, if it did do well, maybe we'd see some of the other old ones that have a lot of praise behind them, but probably not anytime soon now.
So bringing up another movie that did come out and made some changes before it released, Sonic, right? So Sonic, when we first saw the 3D transition, people panicked. Sega and the production company, they actually changed it. I personally saw Sonic, and I genuinely enjoyed the film. I watched it in a premiere going into it. I thought it was going to be...
You've convinced me to see it. I was skeptical, but you've convinced me to see it.
I was seeing it no matter what.
No, it's just freaking good. It's it's not a good video game movie. It's genuinely like a solid, fun family experience.
It is, yeah. I guess it is a good movie. It is definitely not a great movie,
and it's not meant to be. Like
better than
what I liked
Detective
about that,
Pikachu.
Is it better than Detective Pikachu? Probably.
Overall, yeah. I would say yes.
Yeah, because the story in Detective Pikachu gets really dumb. Somehow Sonic doesn't get as dumb as Detective Pikachu.
And Sonic is self-aware enough, but where I wanted to get here is that Sonic, I think that if they never changed the character model, maybe we would be talking about that in a very different light. Now, I know that the story, you can't just change it because the story already came out in 1998, right? But is there anything about this movie, knowing that they actually animated some stuff, that they did change a couple of things, like not too much, right? But some character models look a little bit different than the original ones. Is there anything that would have been like, man, if they just readjusted this a little bit more for modern sake, it would have led to a much better movie? Is there anything that jumps out at you?
I think they lost a big opportunity to make the story a little bit more exciting, right? You know, make them have to work to get to Mewtwo or something, but they kind of just go into a hall. Mewtwo's there. Pokemon start attacking him. Then he steals all the Pokemon and the clones fight. And then, Ash dies and people cry him back to life. That's basically what happens.
That scene is still real rough.
Yeah.
All these years later, it just gets you right in the feels. Something about Pikachu being all sad made me want to cry.
Like, I'm going to try to electrocute him. Maybe that will make him come back to life.
I mean, it's basically the same as like what is it called? The paddles.
It's just the most absurd scene in a movie. It's so dumb.
And I think it actually got worse in 3D because the benefit of anime like animation is that you have missing frames, right? So, like you watch Full Metal Alchemist, anything like that, they do a lot of anime specific stuff with like overly expressive faces, etc. I think there was one part with Jesse and James that that they both made some weird faces, and it's like in the anime version, like 2D, super makes sense. But in the 3D sense, it just seemed awkward. And
Brock
even
is another great
Pikachu
example
scene,
of that. Like with Brock in the anime, when he would perv out on people, it would be like all over the top, hearts going. He just seemed like a creepy ass dude in this movie.
A lot of the expressions weren't as exaggerated as you could do in anime, because I think if you overly exaggerated it in this style, it would look even more off. but the way that they did it, it just looks, Brock's perviness just doesn't work in 3D.
It doesn't make it into 2020 as a whole. Which also,
he'd get
hell?
canceled.
Yeah, can we talk about that? It's just like this. Keep in mind, movie theater, right? So like wide release film. Brock as a kid, like I didn't think about that, but now as I watch this, like, damn, dude, scale it back a little bit. We got some children watching this
me
thing.
too. Come on, Brock.
Yeah.
I like how they still went with the jelly donut thing. With
I know.
Brock,
yeah, if there's one thing that they could have left behind,
it's like, can't we just add some culture? All right, they're friggin' rice balls, aren't they? They're rice cakes or something.
Yeah. So. I think that there's not that much more that we can talk about this movie, right? I think it's just like a fascinating concept that we are officially getting to this time period where just old IPs are being brought back, not just in the sake of remasters and remakes, Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil 3. We have movies like Aladdin and The Lion King, but now we're not being afraid to delve into, well, what about a Netflix release that's more widely available? Is there anything else from the 90s that, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but just generally speaking, is there a game, a movie, something that you loved as a child and you think it's time that we do bring it back in some way, shape, or form, whether it be a remaster, a remake, a 3D film or something? Because it does seem like inevitably a lot of the 90s is going to be brought back to modern times.
3 words, even though it kind of happened already. Metal Gear Solid. Let's remake the original MGS. It's all I want.
But Twin Snakes is the exact same thing. People, okay, please keep listening to the podcast. I apologize. It was a joke. But the story's basically the same, Keith. It's basically the same.
Move on.
What about you, Ryan?
After that, I don't know if I have anything.
I'm so mad
Keith,
right now.
I'm joking, by the way. So
that's right, you are.
Can you give a little bit of context? Because anybody that hasn't played Metal Gear is probably going like, "What? Why is it so different?" So we had the PS1 version, but then we had the GameCube version, which I played both. And initially, I did think they were the same. Turns out they definitely got a little bit more out there with the GameCube release.
Yeah, because they on a very reductive way, they just took Metal Gear Solid 1 and put it in the Metal Gear Solid 2 engine. But then the developer, Silicon Knights, decided, hey, what if we threw the Matrix in there? Like, bullet time stuff? That's really cool, right? Let's throw it all over Metal Gear Solid and make the most ridiculous, dumb action scenes in this game that's don't
they, like, jump off a missile or something?
One of them, or, like, at one point, Snake, like, uses a missile shot from a helicopter as a propeller to jump up higher and shoot a rocket launcher at the helicopter. It gets real dumb. And so pretend the Twin Snakes didn't happen, remake Metal Gear Solid in its purity, and then I'll die happy. Just put me in the ground after that.
Nothing, Ryan? You got nothing, buddy?
Not even like Silent Hill?
I was going to say, oh, well, okay, all right. You know what? You make a good point there.
But then we have the Silent Hill HD collection. It's basically the same thing.
Stop this right now. You quit it.
And listen, they didn't do Silent Hill 1. Keep that in mind as well. So, yeah, we need... Yeah. I was going to say Banjo-Kazooie, but they did do that for Xbox. Maybe make that a little more available, but... you can get it on you can download it on the Xbox, whatever. So.
I do think it's a lot easier to come up with examples of video games opposed to movies, because with movies, like, I'm trying to wrap my head around a movie that I would want to see something like that with, but a lot of the classics from their time just found ways to work around the limitations in a way that I don't really think to myself, oh, if they did this with this, if they redid it now, it would look so much better. Like, I honestly can't think of an example like that, because...
You know what I'd like to see? But not necessarily 3D, But if there was any way to upscale the original Donkey Kong countries to look nice and smooth and beautiful,
the
but I don't know.
show?
Could you? No, not the television show.
The actual
games.
games. Okay, yeah. I'm like, wow.
You want to go
okay.
back to Congo Bongo one more time or what?
But those were made with those like specific like models that I don't even know if they could do that. You know what I mean? Like
kind of like a re-release, like to make it look more like a ukulele, like the side scroller.
No,
Man,
see,
you
I
know what's
wouldn't want
killing me?
I wouldn't want Donkey Kong Country Returns graphics because I don't like the feel of Country Returns
You almost want the
versus the original.
hyper-realism of the original games on the Super
I just
Nintendo.
want an upscale,
Just a real ape going
just a
after
real,
bananas.
a nicely upscaled version of the game.
We'll call it Harambe Country, and then just have a gorilla.
Never forget. I do remember there was a video game that did something similar like that, and it's gonna annoy me that I can't really think about that now. But I think that is a strong possibility. But everybody watching and listening, please let us know if they were to take anything from the '90s and bring it to modern day. What would it be for you? For me, it would probably be just a lot more stuff from the PS1 days, like the platformers, etc. Time Splitters, the trilogy from the PlayStation 2. I think that's great. You know, we got the Shadow of the Colossus, a remake over a year ago on the PS4, and that was awesome. So I do think that there is a possibility of doing things like that. And the only movie, I don't remember if it's 90s or early 2000s, Small Soldiers. Kirsten Dunst was in that movie,
Gorgonites
right?
and
The Gorgonites. I freaking love that movie. I don't know
maybe
if it still
they should
holds
fix
up.
Toy Story up a little bit. You guys were all up on that. But
Oh yeah, that'd be cool to re-see that with like 2020 animation.
Here's a question about that.
Buzz shot
How would
first.
people react, though, to like a Toy Story? Because look, it would make a lot of money. Let's be real. That would make a hell of a lot of money. But, man...
I
Do you
feel like
think
you
they
wouldn't have
would-
to do much, but you could fix up the humans a little bit and just give like Buzz and Woody more of their modern models.
Yeah, more like a continuation. So they're going to Star Wars it because it's like Star Wars. They upscaled it, and it's like the same movies.
We find out that Buzz Lightyear is a clone, and I'm not even giving you the time of day for that one.
But yeah, people... we love having this conversation. Don't forget you can follow us on our Discord. We can keep the conversation going there at castofthepast.com/Discord. You can leave a 5-star review on your favorite app of choice. Subscribe and click on that bell on the YouTube channel. And up until next time, we will be back with another exciting edition of A Cast.
To the
Past.
Keith,
Yes.
if we were to catch you, which type of Pokeball would we need to use and why?
a love
A beast
ball.
ball. Oh yeah, or a love ball. Maybe
Those
a
would be
net
pretty
ball.
similar, like a beastly levy ball.
That's me, the beastly lovely
You
ball.
want to juggle some beast balls, Keith?
Always. They're nice and blue.